Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're going to be reviewing the rise of the working homeless in Australia today. Let's get in.
They work full-time jobs, serve your coffee, teach your children, and even care for the sick. But when the sun sets, they sleep in cars, tents, or on the streets. This is the new face of homelessness in Australia.
People might end up sleeping in their car. We've got families up and down the country sleeping in tents.
Homelessness services unable to cope with the surging demand. 83% are sometimes unable to answer calls. Almost 40% forced to close their doors during opening hours. Families with children being turned away on 1 in 5 days.
Get really interesting stories, all different perspectives. I quite like the show.
Now, with the amount of immigration that they bring into Australia, the housing just can't keep up with the amount of people that are just flooding into Australia. They all need jobs too. They're taking up all these cafe jobs, entry-level hospitality roles. And it's kind of leaving Australians with nowhere to rent. They have to move rural, back at home with their parents. And it's not looking very good. There's a few people I work with and they're working full-time and they're maybe left with $50 at the end of the week, if they're lucky. That's them putting money away as well.
But there was one bloke in particular who symbolises, just like that guy did on Q&A, millions of people who are struggling, millions of people who couldn't work any harder, but they go backwards every day.
Currently juggling 3 jobs. So I'm holding a full-time job down in the insurance sector. I'm doing Uber Eats and DoorDash food delivery in whatever free time I can get. And on top of that, I'm also making YouTube videos online as an extra source of income. When I first started 3 years ago...
This guy's a good example of a hustler. He's not wasting a single day. Sure, he should have done this years ago before they printed a ton of money. And just pumped inflation through the roof, raised interest rates, put rents up to the point where it's almost unaffordable. This guy should have been doing this years ago. He wouldn't be in this position now. But hindsight is great.
I was doing 70 hours a week and I held that up across an entire year. I hit a New Year's resolution and I said, man, I am killing myself out here.
One of his YouTube videos, and I didn't know about them until that program, was him walking around his suburb talking about the difficulties of cost of living that we have focused on almost every show at the start of our show for the past 3 years.
Things are expensive. The cost of living is insane right now. If you are just working one job and you're on the median income in Australia, $67,000 per year right now, you are living just above the poverty line.
He's one of... In my opinion, $67,000 is a good amount of money. And with a little bit of budgeting, sure, your rent, you might have to live in a share house, but you can rent out rooms for $250 if you can get them. Sometimes $300. You're able to budget and put away money. Obviously, everyone's situation is different. I just think a little bit of delayed gratification can go a long way here to get you ahead. But it is tough.
The new hidden homeless, well-educated, a former IT professional who can no longer work due to failing mental health.
It's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to fall so low.
I was very dubious to the homeless. I used to tell them to get off the behind and go and get a job and they won't be homeless. But when I got put homeless, I opened my eyes up. I actually seen a lot of people that really got put homeless that shouldn't be homeless.
It's just ridiculous. And then the ones that do come up now, there's 2-bedroom houses that I remember 5 years ago being advertised for $350 a week. And
I do understand that when these people are pushed out of their homes and they do end up going homeless, most of them struggle to maintain a job, and then getting into full-time employment to improve their situation is, you've got to take care of housing majority of the time before you can get a full-time job. consistently going to work throughout the week while being homeless, yeah, Australia's not really, well, they're not building enough houses or housing to keep up with keeping all these people off the streets. And if they do, it's really unaffordable.
And now they're 650, 700 a week. And it's like, I walked through that house. Like,
And how much do you earn a week?
On about 750 after tax, yeah.
I think we've lost faith a lot as Australians at this point. We have our pensioners struggling to retire. They can't retire. And if our pensioners can't retire right now, what the is going on with me?
Now that he's talking about pensioners, majority of people who are going to retire with over $3 million in their super, they're going to tax unrealized gains on super. Labor's bringing that in. That affects 80,000 Australians that have done the right thing their entire life, finally made it to retirement, put in all the hard work, and Australia wants to take a cut now. How can you tax unrealized gains when you don't have the realized gains to pay for it? It just makes no sense. The amount of farms that are in supers, it'll be impossible to keep up with that amount of money, especially if you have a bad year. People are going to end up selling their farms. It's really going to affect our grocery prices. Australia keeps jacking up energy prices. We're so material rich here. We should be in a similar situation to Dubai, where the citizens aren't taxed into the ground. It's actually crazy. And we're not heading in the right direction. The people with money are so skewed because they're unaffected by, multiple interest rates. It's just a slight inconvenience. There might be a little less than $500 in your bank account each month. It's no real sweat for them, but it's really affecting the less fortunate people a lot harder.
When I retire, can I retire? Am I working till the day I die? Because this is looking pretty grim in my stances.
Introduction: Australia's new underclass. For decades, the image of a homeless person in Australia conjured up someone disheveled, perhaps struggling with addiction or mental illness, sitting with a cardboard sign in the city centre. But in 2025, a shocking new reality is emerging. Homelessness now includes the working class. Their teachers, aged care workers, hospitality staff, even full-time public servants. People who put in 40 hours or more each week, but simply cannot afford a roof over their heads. And this crisis is growing fast. According to data from Homelessness Australia, the number of employed people experiencing homelessness has jumped by more than 26% in just 3 years. That includes over 122,000 Australians in 2024 alone. This isn't just a housing issue. It's a symptom of an economic system breaking down. It's a warning sign that Australia is dangerously out of balance. Let's take a closer look at how
they keep printing money. The more money they print brings in inflation. Your purchasing power goes down. People who are switched on, Australia likes to invest in crypto. I honestly think Bitcoin is one of the only safe havens left, the only way you can be fluid. Australia's not on the best path at the moment, and I cannot see how they'll fix it. Dollar cost averaging into something like Bitcoin that you can, when things get real tough, you can actually just pick up and move to, say, for example, a place like Thailand, which has just lifted capital gains tax on crypto for the next 5 years. I just don't understand why Australia isn't taking action. It seems like Albanese's not in charge at all. It's just everyone's lining their pockets, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
we got here and why it's only getting worse. Chapter 1. Full-time job, no home. Meet Jessica. She's a single mom working as a full-time nurse in Melbourne. Despite earning just under $80,000 a year, she lives in her car with her 10-year-old son. Her rent went from $420 per week to $700 over the course of 2 years. With no family to fall back on, no social housing available, and long public housing wait lists, she made the impossible choice to live in her vehicle so her son could stay at the same school. Jessica isn't an outlier, she's part of a disturbing trend. In Sydney, median rents now hover around $750 per week, even for someone earning $90,000 annually.
Yeah, if you're in the position where you just can't live alone or have a room to yourself. I do know some of these share houses are not the best situations. I personally live in a share house, but I am responsible for it. So I can handpick who lives here. So obviously I can maintain a harmonious environment. But these other people who are very hands-off will just rent to whoever can pay the rent straight away. Sometimes they're not the most mentally stable people. I have heard some stories, but there are options out there for cheaper rent. Not the nicest, but they are out there.
That's more than 40% of their income, well above the threshold for housing stress. When you factor in utilities, food, transport, and other costs, it's easy to see how full-time workers are being squeezed out of the housing market entirely. The rental market in Australia has become a minefield. Record low vacancy rates, soaring demand, and unprecedented migration levels have created the perfect storm. In Brisbane, rental prices have surged by 35% since 2021. Perth and Adelaide are close behind. Even regional towns once seen as affordable havens, like Ballarat, Tamworth, or Bundaberg, are now pricing locals out. The National Shelter Rental Affordability Index now shows that for minimum wage earners, not a single capital city in Australia offers affordable housing. Government support payments such as Job Seeker or Commonwealth Rent Assistance haven't kept pace with this reality.
I do work very closely with people on Centrelink, and I can agree that the caseloads are going up. More people are jumping on Centrelink. I've even seen people turning down jobs, such as 31 plus an hour, just say there's no point. But I don't know, it's just sometimes I feel like they just can't even put the effort in to get started because they're not going to make any progress. I don't know what point I was making there, but let's continue.
In fact, some recipients now spend up to 80% of their income on rent alone. Chapter 2. Who are the hidden homeless? The term hidden homeless refers to people who don't show up in traditional statistics. They aren't sleeping rough in alleyways. They're couch surfing, living in cars, or staying in short-term motels. A report by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare estimates over 60,000 people fall into this category every night. They don't qualify for emergency shelter because they're employed. They don't fit.
That's crazy. Did I just say 60,000?
This category by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare estimates over 60,000 people fall into this category every night.
People.
They don't qualify for emergency shelter because they're employed. They don't fit the stereotype, but their lives are just as precarious. Families with children are increasingly affected. So are migrants on work visas and older Australians whose superannuation didn't stretch far enough. 1 in 7 people experiencing homelessness in Australia.
Those baby boomers, they had an amazing, incredible period of time. I know everyone has a different situation, but they were through the golden era. You could have bought property super cheap. You could have thrown money in your super and it would have just multiplied. And you would have saved on tax. You could have just put a little bit of money into stocks. There was just so many opportunities. So I it's a tough situation. I hate seeing older people struggling, especially because they're towards the end of their work period. Technology's taken over. They can't keep up with the young people. It's a tough situation. And then they become a burden on their children. It's not a pleasant situation for anyone.
Australia is now aged 55 or older. Many are women who spent years caring for others, only to find themselves destitute in retirement. Living without stable housing while holding down a job is a brutal existence. Imagine finishing a hospital shift at midnight and then trying to find a safe, legal spot to park and sleep. Imagine waking up at dawn in a cold car, changing clothes in a public toilet, and pretending everything's fine at work. Mental health services report rising anxiety, depression, and burnout among the working homeless. The constant stress of housing insecurity bleeds into work performance, relationships.
100%. Try barely sleeping. You wake up, the sun's beaming on your car. It's extremely hot. You've maybe got like 4 hours sleep. You're tweaking. You've got to pump coffee into yourself just to stay awake. Your decision making isn't right. And if you're working a job like a nurse or something like that, administrating the wrong medicine, it's just, it's not an ideal. It's a terrible situation.
And physical health. Children in these situations suffer academically and socially. Sleep deprivation, lack of routine, and stigma from peers can have lasting consequences. This isn't just a humanitarian issue, it's an economic one. When workers are too stressed or sick to work effectively, productivity falls. And when children grow up in unstable environments, it affects the future workforce. Chapter 3. How did it get this bad? Several key policy failures have led to this crisis. Lack of public housing investment. Australia's stock of public and community housing has shrunk dramatically over the past 2 decades. Waiting lists stretch into the tens of thousands. Tax settings favor investors. Negative gearing and capital gains. Tax discounts.
Negative gearing is the dumbest thing that Australia's ever done. For a short period of time, it benefited a lot of people, and now they're just holding on to it and they can't get rid of it because the people that vote are the ones that benefit from negative gearing. Young people don't care about it, and it screws a lot of the housing over. Yeah.
Have made property a playground for investors rather than homeowners. High immigration, low infrastructure growth. Australia added over 500,000 people in net migration last year, but housing construction hasn't kept up, creating massive demand pressure. Wage stagnation. While housing
It's great for homeowners though.
costs soared, wages flatlined. Many Australians now earn less in real terms than they did a decade ago. The result, a market that rewards property ownership and punishes renters, especially low and middle income earners. Chapter 4, is there any way out? Solutions
Bitcoin.
exist, but they require bold political will. Massive investment in public and social housing, not just Band-Aid funding, but permanent, large-scale building program.
Australia could fix the energy bills quite easily. I'm assuming we have so much sun, wind. We could even look into nuclear.
Rent controls in high-pressure areas. These are controversial, but other countries have shown they can work when properly managed. Fairer tax policies, phasing out negative gearing and tightening capital gains. Tax loopholes could reduce speculative demand. Better tenant protections, longer leases, limits on rent increases, and rights to keep pets or make minor changes could improve rental stability. Employer housing partnerships. In some industries, employers are starting to offer subsidized housing to retain staff, particularly in aged care, teaching, and emergency services. But perhaps most urgently, we need to shift the national mindset. Housing is not just an asset class, it's a basic human right. If current trends continue, Australia's housing crisis won't just affect the poor, it will devour the middle class. Imagine a future where teachers, nurses, and even engineers can't afford to live in the cities they serve, where commuting 2 hours each way from the outskirts becomes normal, where the only people who can afford to live in the inner city are landlords, corporations, or international buyers. That future isn't far off. In some places, it's already here. Australia risks becoming...
Australia should remove any capital gains tax for crypto, turn Bitcoin into being registered as a currency, like that judge did somewhere in Australia. That'll bring in a ton of wealthy crypto investors, remove all the red tape for buildings, and they'll come here, flood Australia, start building housing. I don't know. I'm just spitting out ideas here, but there's no action I see happening at the moment.
A two-tier society, those with property and those without, and the gap between them is growing into a chasm. Conclusion: the invisible majority. The rise of the working homeless is a national shame. It reveals the cracks in the very foundation of our society. We must stop pretending this is someone else's problem. These are our colleagues, our neighbors, our relatives. We need real action at every level of government to make housing secure, affordable, and accessible. Because no one who works hard and contributes to society should be forced to sleep in their car. Australia is at a crossroads. What kind of country do we want to be? Subscribe for more real stories about life in modern Australia. To watch the
Yeah, so Australia is definitely not heading down the right path. What were they saying? The median income is about $750. That's generally someone working almost full-time hours. The majority of that's going towards rent. Then they have bills, food, sometimes car payments, unexpected costs. Some people are one fine away from just crumbling completely. As I said before, I work with someone who works full-time, and they maybe put away $50 a week. Australia needs to get their act together. Otherwise, the wealthy people are going to start leaving. All they're doing is increasing taxes constantly. They even want to tax sugary beverages now. 20%. Not that it affects me at all. But thank you for watching this video. I plan on doing more commentary on other videos. And hopefully I'll be more prepared next time. But thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.